Well, nothing was broken at Spokane Transit when we restructured our governance, but lots of things have been improved since we worked with Doug Eady several years ago. And I would say under the broadest heading, the things that I do to make sure that our relationship, the relationship between the board and I is strong, is communications and relationship. And isn't that true of just about everything we do in this life? We have to communicate often and well, and people will listen to us when we're in relationship with them. So I spend a lot of time on the phone, especially with my board members, all of whom are elected officials appointed by their jurisdictions, and they serve on between 5 and 15 other boards and committees. So I'm sensitive to their time requirements everywhere else in the community, and I try to make our time together meaningful. And my rule when I came in for myself and my staff is also the rule that I have for the board, and that is no surprises. No surprises. If you can get away with having no surprises, life will be steady. And so when we have a serious accident, controversial media coverage, we had a surprise inspection by Labor and Industries that entailed fines. Those are the kinds of times when I am on the phone immediately with our board members, one at a time, followed up by email to let them know what had happened. And we had a terribly unfortunate event in Spokane in early June where there was a fatal stabbing at one of our transit centers. And I arrived, the police had taken control of the facility, and I had communicated with every board member and the mayor and the 3 state officials from that district and others to let them know what had happened. The police had it under control, and we were able to tell almost immediately that this was not a random act, that one bad guy was looking for another bad guy, and there was a tragic murder. The board so appreciates that, and I know I appreciate it too. So those are kind of the broad headings of communications and relationship.
I've been the CEO at DART going on 14 years now, and we have 15 board members, and they're appointed by the city councils. And you know, after you've been in your role for a while, you have a tendency to assume that people have the same knowledge base that you do or have the same experience level that you do. And I think one thing that we all need to constantly remind ourselves, or certainly I need to constantly remind myself, is that our board members, in our case, are at all levels of knowledge. They're at all levels of experience relative to DART. Some of them have been here 16 years on the board. Some of them have been here less than 2 years. And you know, in a large organization, especially when you're not involved on a full-time basis, it takes a while to get up to speed, to understand what's going on, where all the pieces are, and as a CEO, it's my job to make sure that I provide that information to them in a timely manner and in a manner that is easily understood. At the same time, I need to respect their time and their knowledge base and where they are. And you know, we always hear and we always kind of make the joke about never assuming. And I think that's particularly true in our role. We should never assume that the board member knows or doesn't know. And so it kind of gets back to communication and just making sure that we are constantly communicating with our board members, that over time we build those relationships, and as a result, understanding what their particular interests are, and then making sure that we address those particular interests along with the overarching issues that are going on with within the agency. As a result, I will send regular emails, and when I say regular emails, that means that when I have things to report, and it may be an update on the State Fair of Texas ridership over a 24-day period. We may give an update during the fair and after the fair on where that ridership was, how we did compared to previous years, and things of interest that are going to be important to the board. Obviously, if we have a specific event that's happening within the system, it's important to get that word out as quickly as possible, whether it be through a phone call or an email, and make sure that the board is notified, hopefully before it shows up on the evening news. But when I say regular emails, the other thing that I think is important is don't send something for the sake of sending it, because I suspect that at that point the board members probably aren't as interested in reading it if they know something's going to come out every Friday, and I generally try to send my emails on Friday, but I don't send it just to report stuff that's probably of no interest to the board. So it takes a little bit of experience, a little bit of anticipation, what they're going to be interested in, what they're not going to be interested in beyond the obvious. And then the phone calls, the relationships. Spend the time with your board members. Respect their time. They've got full-time jobs outside of the agency, but spend some time with them when you can, whether it be in an APTA event or some other event, and get to know them, get to know what their interests and issues are, and generally they're pretty open about telling you, and then make sure that you specifically address their concerns and issues as they come along. If it's a particular contracting situation, make sure that they're not caught off guard, and that there are no surprises. I've got one line extension, and we've had a lot of light rail extensions over the years, but I've got one light rail extension that goes through a particularly underserved community, and so this board member represents that area, and I've made sure that I'm in constant communication with that board member about that particular project and where we are, what's the status. And while it's important to everybody, that board member certainly has a heightened interest. And so, you just make sure of that. And then, interestingly enough, I had another board member that had not ridden transit very much, and then their car went in the shop for a prolonged period of time, and they became a transit-dependent user. And it was interesting because they would walk to the bus stop from their house. They would check the where's my bus, where's my train on the phone app, and then they would. And in knowing this, I would certainly check on that board member periodically, say, how'd it go? How was the I know we believe everything is perfect every day, but occasionally things don't go exactly as planned. So I'd check, how was the operator? Did they greet you when you got on the bus? Were they helpful? Were they informative? And sometimes you hear some things that make you feel good because it all went great, and sometimes you hear things that make you kind of perk up and say, well, we need to check into that, and we need to look at that, and sorry for the confusion, or sorry for that bus that passed you by. And those kinds of things that we need to do. But sometimes my board members also will contact folks within the staff. If after they've been on the board for a long time, they get to know folks, they get to understand who does what and where they are, and that's going to happen. It's at least in our case, it's going to happen, and it's almost inevitable. And the unwritten rule here is that if you have a board contact, if one of our staff members has a board contact, just let me know, get in touch with me, and tell me what was said, and if I need to follow up with a board member, I will. If I don't, then we move on. If it was dealt with and handled, then we move on. Obviously, during my annual reviews, I reinforce that communication with me if they're talking to staff members with an expectation that something might happen. Without including me in that conversation, it's hard for me to be responsive to them. And so, a lot of it is just subtle reminders to let them know that include me in the conversation so I can make sure that things are dealt with promptly and efficiently, and everybody can get the answers to whatever questions they may have. So, in our case, from a board contact perspective, it works pretty well in that regard, and the staff has a pretty clear understanding of what my expectations are when it comes to communications with board members.
Well, we have the same system in place that I think Gary does, and that is board members are welcome to contact my senior leadership team if they need information. Then my staff member responds to them typically by email and copies me. If a board member, and this doesn't happen very often, strays into asking a staff person to do something, then the staff person politely responds that he will turn that question over to me. So I have not had any problems with that. There's a great deal of respect for the communication channels without it being oppressive. Board members can talk to staff members when they want information. Now, I've been here for 9 years. And I have been blessed with wonderful boards. And what I appreciate so much about them is how they help me do what I do. So while it's to their advantage, and I know I'm being a good supportive CEO to keep them in the know on things that are happening by providing them with specific project information that they're going to be asked about by their constituents, even providing them message points so that they understand sort of what the high flyover is on any given project. I benefit equally or more by our communication. Their political savvy, all being elected officials, that's a perspective I don't have. I work with elected officials but have not been one. And so their perspective, the lens through which they see the world, is so helpful to me in developing strategy for working with various people and groups. The other thing that is so great about the board, and I have been doing this more in the last number of years than I did before, is that I bring board members along with me, because it's interesting how much credibility a board member has, say, in the business community, when he or she says the very same thing I have said before. Hearing it now from an elected official helps create a sense that, well, I guess the CEO was telling us the whole story all along. And that's good for my credibility too. It's been great to have board members travel to APTA conferences with me, and this is not something that happened in the first 4 or 5 years of my tenure, because there had been a time when the organization was thought of as sending too many people on junkets. And so we ratcheted back perhaps too far. And now board members will go to a couple of conferences. No more than 3 or 4 of the board members will travel in a year. But in addition to getting that exposure to the industry, because they come from all walks of life as well, although they're all elected officials, many different vocations, I get to spend time with them one-on-one to understand maybe more specifically about what they're thinking about, things that they don't have time to talk about when we're in the rush of a quick phone call or following a board meeting. And that has gone a long way in building their confidence in me, and they know I know what their interests are.
board members set the tone, they set the vision, they provide the direction for the organization. They can really make or break a transit organization, and it's up to the CEO to provide that foundation for them to help guide and set the tone and vision for an organization. So, that relationship is just absolutely critical. And everybody's got their own style. Everybody's got their own communication techniques. But the main thing is do it. Just to always make sure that you're communicating. Never take it for granted that they know what's going on or that they already have, the information they need. And so for some of us, it's just really easy to kind of get in that comfort zone, in that kind of in that rut, quite frankly, where you think everything's going along pretty well, and then all of a sudden you realize, man, you left everybody behind you, and or they're off to one side or another, and it's just so much more effective from an organizational perspective if you're all going down the path together, because great things can happen when you're on the same page, you're communicating, you're thinking about the same issues, and you've got the same frame of reference. So it's the critical relationships, and you cannot afford to let those go by and not take advantage of the great people that you have serving on the board.